Hello and welcome to this next session of Facebook Live. Today we would be talking about how to influence consumer choices, consumer decisions using the Freudian theory for personalities. Now, various researches have been done because what is the point of being in business if your product is not reaching the target group that it was meant to be, and if it is not reaching the right market pocket that it was meant to be. So let's begin with understanding who a consumer is firstly. So consumer would be any individual or an organization which would be buying the products or services of any business that is being run. They are the decision makers, and they are the ones who make the business run. Unless the consumer is there, there's no point of the business being there. Now, since they are the decision makers, what makes them decide? Why are their choices the way they are? And you, as an organization, do you have any choice, any control over their choices? Can you influence them? On what basis do we study the consumer? On what basis should we use the medium of reaching out to them, etc.? All of these things we'll get to understand in the next few minutes, briefly though. So now, how to influence the consumer behavior? We have to understand what drives the consumers to choose a particular product. What was their motivation with respect to other products in question when there are so many similar products in the market? That has to be analyzed and studied by marketers. And most of the selection process involved in purchasing is actually based on emotions and reasoning. And at the end of the day, all of us are emotional beings. Even the most practical of us, the decisions that we make are based on some emotion that was evoked in us, some emotion that we experienced. So the study of consumer behavior only helps to understand the past, not only the past, but also to be able to predict the future trend, what can be and how things can be done to achieve better accuracy, in their marketing segment, reaching out correctly and tapping the market segment. The study is also about factors pertaining to the tendencies, attitudes and priorities of people, and must be given due importance to have a fairly good understanding of the purchasing patterns of the consumer. So let's look at the various ways in which companies reach out to their prospective consumer pocket. One could be through marketing campaigns. Let's say that's number 5 if we do a countdown. So the first amongst those, the fifth, number 5 is marketing campaigns. So advertisements play a greater role in influencing the purchasing decisions made by customers, and they are even known to bring about a great shift in marketing shares of competitive industries by influencing the purchasing decisions of consumers. So the marketing campaigns done on regular basis can influence consumer purchasing decision to such an extent that they may opt for one brand over another, or indulge or be frivolous, be indulgent in themselves. So marketing campaigns, if undertaken at regular intervals, even help to remind consumers to shop for not so exciting products such as health products or insurance policies. So by marketing campaigns, that means reinforcement of the presence of your product in the market and why they should go in for it. These are constant reminders through advertisements, let's say on television, radios, or even hoardings. Print media, all of these are reminders of why they should go in for your product. At number 4, what makes people buy is the economic conditions. So consumer spending decisions are known to be greatly influenced by the economic situation prevailing in the market. So what are we talking about right now is why people buy or not buy, and we spoke about the marketing campaign. Second, why they would choose, why the decision would be weighed on one side or the other would be the economic conditions, and we said the economic situation prevailing in the market. So this holds true especially for purchases made for vehicles, houses and other household appliances. So that means the timing is very important of when you reach out to your target consumers, prospective consumers. So a positive economic environment, in fact, is known to make consumers more confident and willing to indulge in purchases, irrespective of their personal financial liabilities. So it's the overall atmosphere, the financial tune of the market. So that's why the timing of your propaganda of reaching out has to be timed correctly. Number 3 is their personal preferences. People decide, choose, buy, don't buy because of their personal preferences. So at the personal level, we see the consumer behavior is influenced by various shades like their likes, dislikes, their priorities, their morals, their values. So in certain dynamic industries such as fashion, food, personal care, the personal view and opinion of the consumer pertaining to a style and fun can become the dominant influencing factor. So what does this mean for us? It means that what language are you speaking? What aspect of their personality or their trait are you targeting? So there has to be one consistent message that every brand must communicate, that it associates with, because everybody has different personal preferences, and the product may not maybe suit everybody. You have to be clear about who is your tribe and talk to them in a language which makes it very clear that your product is well aligned with their likes, dislikes, morals, whatever that you're targeting on. Number 2, why people buy or don't buy is group influence. So group influence is also seen to affect the decisions made by a consumer in researches that are done. The primary influential group consisting of family members, their classmates, even their immediate relatives, and the secondary influential group consists of let's say neighbors and acquaintances, and they are seen to have greater influence on the purchasing decisions of a consumer. So we all have, most of us have a herd mentality. Whatever everybody is doing must be right, must be good. So okay, if they've done it, it seems like alright, maybe we should also consider it. Now say for instance the mass liking for fast food over home cooked food, or the craze for the SUVs against small utility vehicles are some glaring examples of the same, of the group influence. Now number 1 is the purchasing power. Depending on the purchasing power of the consumer, an individual, they would decide whether they buy something or not. Even if they like something, would they go in for it or not? And the purchasing power of a consumer, as we say, plays a very important role in influencing the consumer behavior, and the consumers generally analyze their purchasing capacity before making a decision to buy and products, any products or services. So the product may be excellent, but if it fails to meet the buyer's purchasing ability, it will have high impact on its sales. Segmenting consumers based on their buying capacity, in fact, would help in determining eligible consumers to achieve better results. So there again, there would be segmenting, sectioning of your target consumers. And maybe it would be a good idea to introduce some financial schemes, some paying up schemes, some EMIs, whatsoever. That can make it lucrative for them. So if they like a product, if it is beyond their purchasing power, then all of your campaigning would not be fruitful. It will not bear any results, positive results. Okay, having said that, having said about those 5 reasons generally why people buy or don't buy, the reasons why consumers choose something, let's get into what Freud had to say, the psychoanalytic theory of personality. Sigmund Freud, known as the father of psychology. As per him, the human psyche is structured in 3 parts. It is the id, the ego, and the superego. And these develop at different stages of our life. So that means each one of us would have part in us, some part of ego and some part of superego. They coexist simultaneously. So it depends now, what does it mean for a marketer? It means that whatever campaign, marketing that you're doing for your product, whatever influence you're trying to create in the consumers, you have to be clear about which aspect of their personality are you talking about? Which ego stage or state are you talking about? Because all three of them exist simultaneously. All three of them understand a different kind of a message, and all three of them would respond to different kind of stimulus, if you may say. So an individual's feelings, thoughts and behavior are a result of the interaction of these three forces, and they work together to create a complex human behavior. So what is id? It contains our primitive drives and operates largely to the pleasure principle, whereby its two main goals are the seeking of pleasure and avoidance of pain. So if you, in your marketing strategy, in your brand positioning, you want to be able to talk to and communicate to the id of the consumers, there would be things that you portray as very desirable, instantaneously, that will be satisfied because you take this product, and maybe avoid a certain pain, that if you do this you'll be instantly relieved of something. So these are instantaneous responses. So our id is made up of, the consumer's id is made up of these instantaneous reactions for seeking pleasure, instant gratification, and also avoiding pain at all cost. Then, talking of the ego part, according to Freud, the ego develops from the id and ensures that the impulses of the id can be expressed in a manner acceptable in the real world. So this is the thinking part of us, and this is the conscious part of us. And this would mean that people would respond to logical kind of a dialogue or any kind of a display. So if you were able to, in your marketing campaign, in your advertisements, etc., if you're able to give logic of as to why this is good and why that is bad, why to have this, why to avoid that, that would be, you are targeting the ego part of the consumer personality. The superego is the aspect of personality that holds all of our internalized moral standards and ideals that we acquire from both parents and society. So this is about morals, about feeling good about, okay, I did that, I have a responsibility, I'm a responsible citizen, I'm a caring father, I'm a caring mother, any of those things, messages that we have gathered of being good and bad, or acceptable and not acceptable, right from our childhood, from our parents we have observed, and from the society. So wherever your communication with the consumer is in the language which talks about this is the right thing to do, since you are a responsible person, responsible citizen, or you carry out your duties, any of these expectations, standard stereotypical expectations, that would be the language of the superego. And it provides guidelines for making judgments and begins to emerge at, in fact, the age of 5, when we start falling into a pattern of what is the expected good behavior or not such a good behavior. So Freud basically believes that people are fundamentally irrational creatures, and rather than reason, our most powerful driving forces are power, security, and even sex. At around the time Freud was formulating these ideas, American producers in fact were experiencing a major problem, because consumers had yet to develop a hyper-consumerist mindset. That means products were still advertised for rational reasons like durability and quality instead of emotional ones. So because of that, what was happening was that the supply was high, yet the demand was low. It was down as compared to the supply. And that is why when Edward Barney entered the scene, he is known as the father of public relations, and he took up Freud's ideas and applied to consumer behavior and studying consumers. So if the desire of the psyche, let's say, is our driving force, whatever our psyche desires is the driving force behind choosing a product, then appealing to emotions seemed like the most powerful way of persuading consumers to buy. So the premise was to short-circuit their rational conscious and target them where they were most vulnerable, that is the unconscious. So what happens is many a times products give out way too much rational information, way too much logical information, and we completely overlook that a lot of unconscious and subconscious, a whole lot of majority of our decisions are based on the subconscious and the unconscious. These are the emotions that are evoked indirectly in us, so we tend to overlook that. So now as we talk about how can we influence the consumer choices using the Freudian theory of personality, this is what the basic message really is. So let's be very clear about who your herd is, like I said, and what message you'd like to send out. Let's appeal to a certain emotion, because when you're able to evoke emotions, that is when people decide this way or that way. So in fact, now if you would observe the trend in advertisements, and more emotional advertisements are coming up. Yes, the emotion could be pertaining to the id or the ego or the super ego. However, the bottom line remains emotion. Very often you would see, especially like Indian advertisements now, you would see that a whole lot of a wonderful story is told, which is completely heart-touching, and it's so emotional that you feel, oh my God, such a beautiful story. And then they talk about their product, and they hardly talk about their product. But in your subconscious mind, the unconscious mind, what has happened? That emotion got registered, and the product got associated with it, and you would have a leaning towards that particular product because you associate that good feeling with that particular product. Now, in a world where there are a vast number of similar products and all of our base needs are satisfied, creating a personality for a brand that consumers can emotionally connect with is of profound significance today. And successful advertisers, in fact, are those that are able to manipulate human motivation and develop a need for goods that consumers are unfamiliar with or initially don't desire. So there is a need generation that takes place by the very effective influence over their emotion. So if we were to talk about the ego and the ego part of the personality, it is the system which will mediate between the id and the super ego. So let's take the example of Nike. Nike advertisements, all of its marketing propaganda is all based and targeting the ego aspect. So if you may recall, ego was the thinking part of everybody's personality. It was the rational or the logical part of everybody's personality. So Nike advertisements focuses on ego-focused branding. Now this type of strategy is fully centered on building the customer's ego, so which already exists, but it talks to that ego part of the personality. So Nike will, you will see, always positions itself as a brand for those who achieve great things and demonstrate that in their ads. Marketing is focused around the user, a user who achieves great things, a user who is on path to self-betterment, and that just so happens to be using Nike products while doing so. So the brand isn't marketed as a product you need to succeed, but rather the consumer uses it because they do succeed. So it's not seen as a product, but rather a way of life. So if you may dissect the advertisement of the campaigns of Nike, you would understand that it is talking about, it is very well validating the ego part, the emotion that yes, I am successful and I am moving on my path of self-improvement and all of those, and because I'm that and people like that use Nike. It's not because of Nike that I am successful. So this is completely building the consumer's ego part. It's talking to the ego part of the consumer. Now on the other hand, along the same line is the advertisement campaign for Gatorade. Now that it's known as this brands itself as the sports fuel, any and everything regarding to sports and to energy drinks and towels or whatever. Now it's again talking to the ego part of the consumer. Now what happens over here, there's a slight change in the strategy because it uses a strategy called product focused branding. So this strategy differs from Nike's because instead of lifting up the customer like Nike does, Gatorade plants a seed of doubt in the consumer. Their marketing and advertising focuses on the product and positioning it as something you need to succeed. Here again, a rationale is being being talked about, a logic is being talked about, it's about decision making, etc. And if you want to be successful, you want to push yourself further, this is what you need to be successful. So Gatorade positions itself as a product that empowers the consumer to achieve great things. Now, moving on to the id. Id is all about instant gratification, etc. So you would have noticed that a lot of advertisements would have undertones of sensuality and would show a completely unrelated product. They would show a woman who is very sensual, very beautiful. Why do those things sell? Why does sensualism sell? It's again, according to Freud, the id, which is responding. And it has the impulsive part of our psyche that responds immediately to the instinct. It demands that instant gratification to experience pleasure and actively avoids pain. So one of its two major instincts is called eros, which is the life instinct that motivates people to focus on pleasure-seeking tendencies, example, even the sexual urges. Because it operates on the pleasure principle, which is the idea that every impulse should be satisfied immediately. So sex is used in advertisements to gratify this part of the psyche. Therefore, we see why many ads often contain these sensual, sexual themes or undertones. Their product might be completely unrelated, but that is what the id responds to: instant gratification and instant pleasure, and the brand gets associated to it. And along the same line, a different example for id would be why normal sells. We talked about why sensual sells, so you could see how instant gratification sells. On the other hand, again, id also responds to the normal. So recently there has been a rise in the marketing of average consumers through general advertisements and real campaigns. So you would see real life people who look like you and me, they would be, and their households look like us, their lives look like us. So this particular campaign appeals to the id again of individuals, since consumers are able to view themselves in the ad representative and receive a great pleasure from witnessing average individuals to be a more realistic representation of the public. And the general rise of average consumer marketing and real campaigns is due to the positive response the consumers themselves have given. Consumers here are able to relate to these, and individuals, they feel better about themselves as a person. So here again, the id, which wants validation, which wants acceptance as they are, and they want to feel important as they are, will relate to this. So now, what does this mean to you as an organization? That again, it's all about what kind of a segment you're looking at. What kind of people you want to reach out to? Do you want to reach out to the masses? You want to reach out to the very exclusive particular group? So you will have to moderate the messages of your brand strategy, brand positioning as per that. The last part of it is the super ego of our personality, and super ego is the counterbalance of the id. So if id is the instant gratification, pleasure seeking, super ego is essentially the consumer's conscience. It internalizes the society's values and morals, and in fact it will set the parameters for socially acceptable behavior. So the superego was developed to try and prevent the id from seeking self-gratification. Here is where morals will come in and values will come in. So whenever you're able to talk about all of those aspects through your dialogue, that means you will be talking about in the language of the superego. So here is a brief gist of what influences the consumers to make choices. It all depends on you as a marketer, your organization, how your product has been positioned, what messages is it giving out to. If the messages are mixed up, you will not be reaching your specific target group. So we have to have clarity on the consumers that we are looking out for, and the messages have to be consistently in line with that. So I think that's about time that we have for today. Some questions that would be coming in. Let me just quickly look at them. So Jill Vikram says over here, will brand awareness influence buying decision of consumers? Yes, absolutely. Now again, who will propagate the brand awareness? The organization, the company. Then again, there has to be a consistency about, see, it's all about a mental hook, Jill. The mental hook is most important. The consumer, the prospective consumer would be willing to spend time getting to know your product only after the attention has been grabbed. So perception always follows attention. Now that means you have to get the attention of the consumer first, and then they will be able to form an idea, that is the perception about your product, and that is the space where you can further create the brand awareness as to what the features are. This also I think would relate to the FAB analysis that we often talk about in management, the features, advantages and benefits. What sells actually are the benefits, not the features. Features come last, but it's a mental hook. The benefits create the mental hook. Jayant Singha is asking, how does personal factors affect consumer buying behaviors? It's all about personal factors, and Jayant, I'm not sure about which personal aspects you're talking about in particular, but as I have gone through various things very briefly today, it starts and ends with the personal factors. Even when we design a campaign, we are appealing to those personal factors of the prospective consumers. So it's about their own financial stability, their motivations in life, the kind of stated or unstated needs that they have. This is what it's about, evoking a certain emotion. They may not even begin with wanting a certain product, but you as a marketer can make them feel the need of a product by associating a certain emotion to it. Nikita over here is asking, does advertising really influence consumer behavior? Nikita, yes, there are examples galore all around us. We tend to follow trends, we tend to follow celebrities, we tend to follow real life people, depends on what we connect to. So if you look at the things that you have bought, let's say in the last 1 month or 2 months, try and evaluate how did you come to know about that product? What were, that itself will give you a clue about, yes, you may think you made a very practical decision, but why exactly you chose that particular product is an influence of how it was marketed, right? So Vaibhav over here, okay, he says, thanks for this live session. You're most welcome, Vaibhav. So I think that's about time that we have today for the session. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again very soon with yet another topic which would help you further your progress as a professional. Thank you so much for being here.